If you think Draw Steal's 2d10 is just d20 with extra steps, you're missing the entire point of this system. I've now run this system for a couple of groups, and there's always this moment, usually around the second or third combat, where it still feels more complicated than d20. So I'm going to show you why this isn't complicated, it's just different. And that difference is the whole design. We'll look at what makes the probabilities work differently, how tier outcomes change everything about the gameplay, and that's in a good way, and why this actually makes the game easier to run once you get it. By the end, you'll understand why I like the 2d10 system and how to use it with confidence. Let me show you something that changes everything. Here's what d20 probability looks like. Completely flat. Every number from 1 to 20 has exactly a 5% chance. Now look at 2d10. See that mountain shape? It's a bell curve, not a flat line. Most people look at these and think, okay, but that's just math trivia. First time I saw this graph, I thought the same thing. Cool math fact, doesn't change the gameplay. Then I ran my first combat with this system and started tracking the rolls. My players were hitting tier 2 about 70% of the time. Not random chaos, predictable patterns. That bell curve wasn't trivia, it was the entire design philosophy. So let me break it down what those numbers actually mean. Rolling an 11 or on a 2d10, that's 10% of rolls. On a d20, 5%. Rolling a 2 or a 20, that's 1% on 2d10 versus 5% on d20. The middle happens way more often. Extreme results are actually rare. That means you can actually predict likely outcomes, not just hope for lucky rolls. Look at that peak in the middle. That's where most of your rolls live. You're not gambling on chaos, you're working with probability. Design your character around consistent tier 2 outcomes, not gambling for tier 3. D20 is like throwing a dart at a wall of 20 equally sized targets. 2d10 is like throwing at a bullseye where you're way more likely to hit the middle. Now you see the curve. Next question is, what does this bell curve actually do when you're at the table rolling dice? In D20 systems, you roll, you either hit the DC or you don't. Binary outcome. This system doesn't work that way. You roll to get a tier, a spectrum of successes. Let me show you what that actually looks like. Had a player trying to intimidate a guard during a negotiation scene. They rolled low, tier 1. In D20, that's a failure. Guard laughs, combat starts, you know, the typical. But here, tier 1 meant the guard was nervous but didn't back down. He hesitated. Had they rolled a tier 2, would have made him step back, and rolling a tier 3 would have made him stand aside completely. All three outcomes moved the story forward. None of them were, you failed, nothing happens. That's the fundamental difference. Not pass-fail, but how well you succeed. Tier 1 is 11 or lower. You accomplish something, but minimal impact. Tier 2, 12 to 16, moderate success, the average outcome. Tier 3 is 17 or higher, maximum impact. That means you're never wasting a turn, just getting different levels of impact. Use the climbing wall example from the rulebook. Tier 1, you struggle halfway up. Tier 2, you make it up, maybe get scraped. Tier 3, you scale it smoothly. Same action, climbing a wall. In D20, you either beat the DC or you don't. Here you get 3 different outcomes. All of them move the story forward. Focus on how much you succeed, not if you succeed. D20 is a light switch, on or off. This system is a dimmer slider. You always get some light, just different brightness levels. Okay, so tier outcomes give you a spectrum instead of binary, but here's the part that really changes the game. You literally can't whiff in combat. Power rolls in combat always do something, even tier 1 hits. This is radically different from D20, where rolling low means you miss completely. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. I had a new player worried about quote-unquote wasting turns in their first combat. First round, they rolled a 9 total. Tier 1, they still dealt damage, still pushed the enemy back, still contributed to the fight. By the third combat, they weren't afraid to take risky tactical moves because they knew even low rolls did something. That psychological shift is huge for gameplay. Even with +0 characteristics, rolling a 2 and a 1, which is tier 1, lowest possible, you still hit in combat. Compare that to a D20 where you need to beat the AC, and low rolls do nothing. Tier 1 still hits, still does damage. Even your worst combat roll accomplishes something. Combat stays dynamic and engaging even when the dice are cold. You can take tactical risks without fear of doing literally nothing. And how many times have you had that thought in the middle of a session? Now, tests outside of combat can fail, but failure should make the story move more interesting, not grind it to a halt. It's like shooting a basketball and shooting free throws. In a D20, you either swish it or it bounces off completely. Here, even a bad throw might hit the rim and bank in. It's not perfect, but it still scores. That's the why. Now let me show you the how, the actual steps to make a power roll. Roll 2d10 and add one of your characteristics. I rolled a 7 and a 5, that's a 12. I have a +3 might, so that's 15 total. Now what does 15 actually mean? First session I ran, a player said, okay, I rolled an 8 and a 6, now what? They had the numbers but didn't know what to do with them. I said, add your characteristics. They added +2, got 16. Then I said, that's tier, look at your sheet. Suddenly it clicked. The dice give you a number, the tier tells you what happens, and your character sheet describes it. Here's the full process broken down. Check your total against tiers. 11 or less is tier 1, 12 to 16 is tier 2, 17 or higher is tier 3. And here's the actual process. You roll 2 d10s. I get a 7 and a 5, that's 12. Add my characteristics. I have a +3 might, so 15 total. Check the tiers. 15 is tier 2. Now look at my ability to see what tier 2 does. 3 breakpoints, not 50 different DCs to remember. If you have a skill that applies, you add +2. Only one skill counts, they don't stack. So if you're climbing and have both athletics and acrobatics, pick one. You only get a +2, not a +4. You can also downgrade your outcome if a lower tier is more useful, tactically. Character building focuses on which characteristic to boost, not just stacking +1s everywhere. Think of the dice as your raw effort, the characteristic as your natural talent, and the tier as your result. Like cooking, dice are your technique. Characteristic is your experience. Tier is whether the dish is okay, good, or amazing. And if you're finding this helpful, subscribe. I'm building a whole series breaking down this game system piece by piece. I also send out a weekly newsletter with deeper insights on game mechanics, links in the description. You've got the mechanics, but if you're still feeling uncomfortable with this system, that's actually normal. Let me explain why. If you've played D20 for years, this feels wrong at first. Your brain wants to know what's the DC. But that's D20 thinking. Here, you're not hitting targets, you're generating outcomes. That's a fundamental mental shift. Get it? Play on words. Okay, it was bad. When I first ran this game, I kept asking myself, okay, but what's the DC for climbing this wall? Because that's how my brain worked after years of Pathfinder 2e. I'd look at the tier outcomes and think, this is just DCs with extra steps. Then I actually ran 3 combats back to back and realized I wasn't tracking misses. There were no misses. Every roll moved the combat forward. And suddenly the tiers made sense. They're not DCs, they're impact levels. That shift took me about 3 sessions, and now the discomfort isn't a bug, it's proof you're learning a genuinely different system. If this whole system just clicked for you, hit the like button. Now, when I run this game, I don't think in DCs at all. I think in likelihoods. So this character has a +5. So they'll probably hit tier 2, might hit tier 3. The bell curve makes GMing predictable in a good way. Your D20 brain is asking the wrong question. It wants a target number, but there is no target. There's only outcomes. That mental shift takes a few sessions. Predictable outcomes let you design better encounters and challenges. So, after 2 to 3 sessions, you'll stop asking, what's the DC, and start thinking, I need a tier 2 for this. Give it time. It's like switching from automatic to manual transmission. And for those of you that are younger, you might not remember manual transmissions at all. First few drives feel clunky because you're thinking about every shift. Then muscle memory kicks in and you're not thinking at all. You just drive. Now you understand why 2d10 isn't just different dice, it's a different approach to resolution. The bell curve creates predictability. Tier outcomes create nuance, and always do something keeps the action moving. But we skipped over edges and banes, how characteristics actually work in character creation, and the deeper tactical layer of choosing when to use which abilities. That's all the stuff that makes this system sing in actual play. I've got a full breakdown of edges and banes that shows you how to gain tactical advantage in combat. That's linked on the screen now.